oversight boards exist is that sometimes information comes forward after the fact, and sometimes not all aspects of the fact are looked at. So I think we need, if we're going to dissect last year's town meeting, we need to be careful to do it in its entirety.
I'm not trying to dissect it.
But that is what you're doing.
Well, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. All I know is what I've read. And what I read was that it was approved to go at that site. That's what I know.
Agreed. Mr. Murphy?
My
Please.
response to Lee's question would be that the Historic District Commission can say no to the project.
I'm not questioning that. Well, I'm not questioning that. I'm just,
They
the thing I'm having trouble understanding, being on a building committee in my own town, is a project where a town meeting made a decision. Okay, so I would think the only thing in question would be the scale, how big the police department's gonna be, or what's inside the police department. It would be the, and not questioning this commission. They have all, the rights to go by their bylaws, obviously, or their charter. And it's more of an architectural issue to me, that the purview would be the exterior facade relationship to the district. That's the way I would read it, and I do a lot of this kind of work.
If one reads Mass 40C very carefully, and I don't want to imply that you haven't,
I know it will.
there are statements in there, and I've had to quote them in the past, that talk about size and scope of the structure to the site. And if there is the belief that this building, or to some degree any design of a building, is too large and cumbersome and inappropriate for the site, that is one of the criteria that we're entitled to use. And again, I won't say that the entire board did that tonight, but I know at least some of us did, and that is appropriate within the commission bylaws of what define us. Mr. Jones.
I got a question.
Please.
Town meeting night, the town votes to give us the money even though you are opposed to it. It means you can't do anything with the money according to this committee. Is that correct?
You cannot build this building on this site with that money. Your statement was a little broader.
No, well, the money...
You can still make changes.
The money was appropriated for that site.
I'm not sure how the legal... Excuse me, let me actually finish. I'm not sure how legal counsel would view that. Because, again, let me finish. Because I believe it's possible, if one wanted to analyze it, that since town meeting approved a certain amount of money for a certain building, if we want to go down that nitpicking type of argument, we could go back and say, we shouldn't be going back to town meeting for an extra 1-point-something million. We should be going back to town meeting for the project as it truly is. And I do not know what legal counsel would say on either of those points. I don't think either of us are lawyers to know that.
This could get scaled down, this could get changed from town meeting.
Town meeting could say no?
There's a lot of things there that could be changed, so I think it's fruitless, or, to vote on this this evening, where it's too premature to be voted on. We respect Mr. Murphy's request to try to, have some leadership for town meeting, but I personally feel I want to see the direction which the town is going to go. Because it just changes everything. If the town, and it's the general welfare of the community, if that's what they want, and they want to continue forward with that site, then I will work very hard with the police building committee to do that, to accomplish that. That's where I'm coming from. And you've worked very hard up to this point, and I don't want you to, feel personally attacked.
I don't. I'm just...
Done a great job, and you've done...
I think it's the way we do it, trying to do everything, but it's only because I've served on committees myself. I was on the Historics Commission at Marblehead, doing the Building Committee in Linfield. I mean, I've been this route for 30 years, and I've worked in Nantucket. I've gotten projects approved all over in historic districts, and I've never seen this approach. That's what I guess is the only thing that's disturbing me, because knowing the town meeting approved the money for a specific site to do a police station, that would tell me, and I'm not questioning your rights or whatever, that would tell me then that's where the town wants it. They have to make the decision whether they want to spend more than they appropriated last year. But that would tell me the purview then becomes on the historics, that it would be based on what I read in your charter here, about the appropriateness of like 15 or 16 items there that list all the architecture. That's what I'm having trouble understanding. I'm not questioning what you're doing, it's, I guess the whole process of town meeting to this, it doesn't, something's not clicking to me. And to me, you know, the other question is, the size of the police station has been determined by the needs of the police and a 30-year growth factor based on the demographics of the town. So we know this building, unless you can put in a development with 1,000 new families, which I thought you're going to be able to do in town, you're not going to need a bigger police station. And I think we've been through that whole scenario before with this committee. It's, you know, it's sure it's a big building, there's no question about it. The whole fire station, police station, even the way it is now is a big building. I mean, we did a project in another town where the police station was the police and fire station was the biggest structure in the entire town. Biggest structure, became a major issue, but it did pass. You get a massage, that's all. And that's all we're looking for.
But how large was the lot?
It was not a big lot, and there's no historic district that I've ever worked in that has a big lot. And the town I'm talking about is Wayland, for example, okay? So, I mean, and that was the biggest piece of land in the center of the historic district, not approved. It just, you gotta work at it, you gotta massage it, that's all. It's a combination of everybody working together, that's all it is. I'm not saying you're not working with anybody. It's just, you know, it's a scenario. I mean, you're saying if the building's smaller, it's potentially approvable, but then it's not usable to the end user who's gonna use it.
Therefore,
so
maybe
therefore
maybe the concept is flawed. That is a possibility. Even if it was approved, it is possible that the concept is flawed.
What concept?
Of putting the police station on that site to last for the next 30 years. It is possible. One can debate whether that is an appropriate thing to do, even if it's been an approved project.
But the town made that decision last year, I thought.
Well,
Yeah.
And as I said, based on information that was still, we have to be careful about going around in circles.
I'm just, you know, it's a lot of it's semantics too, because I know they didn't approve it to be on another site, so it's kind of a catch-22.
Oh, anything, Marie, please.
What else?
I appreciate your
Yeah,
comments,
just comments,
but
that's all.
we're also looking at the district,
I understand
the
that.
whole district. We're looking at 3, possibly 4 expansions impacting that district. We're not just looking at it from the police
Oh,
alone.
I'm well aware of that. I understand the whole scenario.
So
I
that's
understand that.
another, you know, concern.
I understand all that.
With all due respect on both of our sides, I think we're getting repetitive.
Absolutely, no question.
Ellen?
May I ask a naive question, because I haven't followed all of this and I've never looked at I haven't seen the interior layouts of the building. Is there a way to marry the needs of the police with the massing requirements of the building? In other words, is there a way to make further amendments to the interior layout such that the massing could be reduced somewhat more? It's a question.
You've done it.
That actually did come up throughout the process.
I realize you've done.
Of course, you haven't been at all the meetings. You
No,
couldn't
I
be. It's
haven't.
insane.
Yeah.
But we actually did go through that. They actually, no, that's not critique. There's just too many meetings in town. They actually did go through that with us. And actually, there was the one reduction of the initial 10% that we've talked about. But the police believes, and I think it's reasonable, that going any further does start to hamper the needs of what the town is actually trying to do.
And is the space under the roof usable, or is that where the mechanical is, or, I'm just curious, sorry to ask.
Well, the windows were for light, so that must be usable
It's
space.
usable, well, it's getting light into the building,
Okay.
the core of the building. Because the windows on the side are small windows. We're trying to flash as much natural light in. As well as the corridor walls would have windows in them. You can bring that light and penetrate that again into the building again. So, I mean, there are some mechanical areas, but they're kind of floating in space, so to speak. But whatever.
Okay. I'd like to thank the Police Station Building Committee, the architect, Mr. Lieb, and others for working through this with us. We will certainly discuss this, obviously, Monday night at town meeting, and I suspect we'll be discussing things more as time progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we have one more topic on the agenda, and I'd like to set a specific appreciation to, thank you, good night. I'd like to say a special thank you to the 3 people interested in working with us in the future on this board for sitting through a relatively long meeting. I promised to make the last part of this as quick as possible. I also apologize that 2 of our members had to leave. I'll make sure that they get all the information that we share. There have been, and I'm sorry I don't have all the paperwork in front of me, I believe there have been about 6 people who've expressed interest, 1 of whom we've talked to and interviewed before. We have not had an opening on this board for quite some time. At the moment, we have 2 of our standing members up for reappointment, 1 of whom has returned the paperwork, 1 of whom has not. Did not have a chance to ask him tonight, but I will next time I can. We also have agreement from our liaison to the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to appoint up to 2 associates, alternates, whatever word we want to use, which we think would be helpful so that there would be more people engaged when our process does continue. With that, what I'd like to do tonight is just, at least for me, ask each of you just a couple questions just to get a perspective of where you're coming from, what your interests are and whatnot, and then give the rest of the board just a minute or 2 to do the same. My hope is we're talking no more than about 15 minutes because I know that it's really late. And again, I do appreciate your coming. At the risk of trying to be as fair as possible, let me do this alphabetically. D, D, G. Jim, to start with you first, the things that I would most like to hear about, just for a minute or 2 from you, what your interest in, what your interest is in the Historic District Commission, what your background is in anything that we do and that affects us here, and what some of the important issues are that you see, and what are some of the desires that you would have in work as it progresses going forward, please.
As far as my interests go, historically, if you will, I grew up in Arlington, which there's a lot of people who don't realize how, as far as this country's growth is very historical as far as April 19th. A lot of historic sites in Arlington. I also appreciate antiquities, so much so that on my honeymoon, we went to Greece, we went to Israel, Egypt, and Turkey. And the reasons to do that was through history courses that I've taken, I wanted to be there and appreciate some of the studies that I had. I find that when you talk about the center of town, and I compare the center of town to the Acropolis. Okay, when you walk the Acropolis, you have many different buildings, many different sizes, different eras. There's an evolution of the history. I think that's what we're going through here. Certainly, you want to appreciate that. I was, disturbed when I first came into town to hear that where Papagino's is, there used to be 3 murals similar to the ones at the Damon Tavern. Okay, and unfortunately they're gone forever. You don't want to see that. You want to make sure that there is a legacy for future generations. And obviously, seeing tonight, you have to balance that with what the town's looking for. Okay, that's a very delicate balance. As was mentioned, you had a project out here that was defeated. You have a project in the center of town that was passed. You people have to, balance that whole thing. That's a difficult job, obviously. But I think, you need a lot of different points of view as far as experience go. I've worked with construction companies. My family, through my in-laws, are in the construction business, so I have appreciation for that. I also have a real estate license, which I don't use, but certainly we keep the interests of what's going on in town. Based on the history that I've had in town, through the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, and the ad hoc committee that I'm with. I think there's, when you get to these boards, you get a certain level of knowledge that a lot of people don't have. And they don't understand, quite frankly, why we do what we do.
Regardless of the board, I think you're right.
There's no question about it.
What are some of the most important issues that you would see and things that you would want to be working on to move the town forward?
Well, as far as the historic...
Yeah, related to what we're talking about,
right,
sure.
As far as, there has to be a balance. And we're moving toward decisions. as you said earlier, there's a lot